Well, Michelle Grattan, it's all over, or almost all over. I guess my big question is, did Kevin Rudd save the furniture for the ALP, giving the party a chance, if not next time round, the time after?
I think he saved a fair bit of the furniture. Of course, you can never establish this definitively because we don't know how Julia Gillard would have gone. But certainly many in the Labor Party and people who are in a fairly neutral position in terms of Gillard versus Rudd believe that Labor was headed to an absolutely massive defeat if Julia Gillard had remained as leader. In fact, they've been defeated, but the terms of that defeat have been moderated.
And would it help the party if he now quit politics?
I believe it would help the party. I think while he is in Parliament, he will be a focus of attention. He will be looked to by the media all the time. He is a potentially destabilising force. You couldn't rule out the fact that he might, after a year or two, if victory looked in sight in the first term, that he might try to come back. I know that sounds quite bizarre, but we did think after the first tilt that turned out to be not a tilt at the leadership this year, that it was all over, and of course a couple of months later it all happened. So I think while he's in Parliament, whatever is in his head, people will see him as a destabilising element. Now, whether he really intends to go through this term or whether he's just waiting for some appropriate international job to come up is not at all clear. It may be that he has in his head, well, he'll search around, see what's there abroad and then go. But a number of people in the party, and some of them have come out publicly, say go and go now.
Focusing on Tony Abbott, some commentators think that the business cycle is now becoming more benign. Has he had a stroke of luck? Is he going to have a following wind in his first term?
Possibly, and also the coalition believes, of course, that the very fact of its election will improve business confidence and will give a lift. And I think Hockey has already been out saying it's going to be a good Christmas spend up. But on the other hand, the international scene is problematic. We don't know what's going to happen there over the next year or two. So no government could be really confident on the economic front. It just has to keep its management as steady as possible, keep a weather eye out for events, whether at home or abroad, and react to them as best it can.
So they'll claim credit if it goes well, and if it goes badly, they'll blame global forces.
Indeed. Good. They're politicians.
The Senate looks difficult. If Tony Abbott can't get his core promises through, what, if any, are the prospects of a double dissolution during this term?
We've got to separate out, of course, the existing Senate and the new Senate. The existing Senate will be dominated by Labor and the Greens until next year when the Senate changes, and Labor's been debating somewhat what it should do about the carbon repeal legislation, but at this moment it seems inclined to oppose that legislation, hold firm to its position, and therefore that would be defeated any time between now and mid-year. Now, the new Senate is dominated by a whole bunch of crossbenchers, but they are in fact right-leaning crossbenchers. Some of them are a bit politically crazy and certainly political innocents, people like the motoring party and the sporting party, and they'll be somewhat hard to read. But on the whole, I think the numbers are pretty clearly there for the repeal of the carbon tax. So it's a question of Tony Abbott waiting, and it's not that long, it's a bit longer than he would want. I don't think that either side of politics will want a double dissolution to go to another election very quickly. Will just play badly with a voting public who are already jaded, so you never quite know how these things turn out. I think, though, if he can get his carbon tax repealed, his mining tax repealed, as he should be able to with the new Senate, he won't have cause, but he might have some problem with his paid parental leave scheme, because the crossbenchers do seem quite critical of that, or at least
even his own side
a number
is
well, even his
divided
own side,
to some
yes.
extent. Yeah.
But I don't think he'd be going to a double dissolution on that.
So can I finish with a bigger question? Reflecting on this election, what are the deep messages? Is there something changing about the public, about the media, about the political process, about public servants possibly being willing to put their foot down under some circumstances?
Well, to take the public servants first, I think that was a very interesting intervention when the Labor Party came out with costings or alleged costings of the opposition's policies and found a big hole in their savings, and the public servants who'd done the costings before the campaign said, no, we didn't cost opposition policies, we costed what Labor gave us, and it all depends on assumptions and so on. I think that was a right stand by the public servants, but it would also be interesting to know whether, if Labor had been a good prospect for re-election, they would have come out so strongly, because I think, as well as protecting their own integrity, they were also sending a message to the opposition, who was likely to be the government, that they were not going to be used or politicised, and they'd been under a lot of pressure from the opposition, especially Treasury, for quite a long time over alleged politicisation. Going to the wider question of the lessons from this election, the big lesson is that the politicians have led to a very disillusioned community by their actions. They have really trashed the political process over some time. Now, this is partly the hung parliament, which meant you had constant campaigning, and combined with a 24-hour electoral cycle, that just drives people mad. And it'll be interesting to see whether the community gets into a better, more benign frame of mind when there isn't that constant campaigning. But in general, people have become cynical about politics. They've lost trust because the politicians have often broken trust. And we have to be careful not to exaggerate this, but nevertheless, it is a dangerous sort of phenomenon to have in the political system. We need to get to a situation where people do have more faith in the political process, that they feel, yes, politicians break promises sometimes, but on the whole, politicians take trust seriously. And until we get to that state, back to that state, if that's possible, I think we will have a fairly fractured system.
Thank you, Michelle. Well, next time we speak, we'll possibly know the outcome of Eden Monaro, Indi, maybe one or two other interesting seats to do with the Palmer United Party. But in the meantime, I hope you can catch up with yourself a bit now that the campaign is over.
Well, we have a new government, so that's easier said than done.
Thank you.
Thank you.